Okay.
So thank you so much
Well,
for
thank
doing
you
this
for having
for
me.
me. This is too cool.
Yeah.
I've been trying to do this for so long
I know.
with
We've
you.
been talking about it for a long time, but we hadn't put it together, so I'm
You're
glad
one
we're
of the
doing it.
most impressive people I know.
Oh, well, you can say that
I
to your mother.
I don't know if I'm getting the details right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so you've got a master's in finance
hmm
and
And a master's in religious education and studies,
oh, okay,
and about to get a master's in divinity from Moody Theological Seminary.
yeah, and you studied at Harvard, still studying
Harvard
Harvard.
was the second master's, yeah.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
and you've owned multiple businesses.
Very many.
You're a
Flute.
professional flute player,
Mm-hmm.
flute teacher.
Flute teacher. More a flute teacher now than professional player because it requires 6, 7 hours of practice
Yeah,
a day to keep your acts up, as they call it.
yeah.
So, I just don't. I did it when I was a kid. I'm resting on my laurels now.
Hmm.
I just don't put that kind of time into practicing. So I don't do symphonies that much anymore. Sometimes I'll sub in, but I'm not a regular in a symphony because you have to stay very well practiced. And I would rather teach. Teaching gives me more of a buzz anyway because I love somebody learning music off of me. And it doesn't even have to be flute, as you well know. It's piano, or I can get them started on harp. I can get them started on some instrument, and if they pick it up and seem like they have capability, I'll find them a real teacher. But it's just for the joy of music. I want people to understand how good it is for you, and what a brain rush it is, and also fun. Then, if you get good enough to play along with other people, there's just nothing more than jamming
Yeah, and
with
it's good for the brain too. It like
yeah.
makes you live longer, prevents
Mhm.
Alzheimer's and
And it's a connection with other
dementia.
people like you have never had.
Yeah.
I mean, sit and talk to somebody all day. You can get to know somebody really tightly personally. But when it comes to music, there is just because you're busy playing, your communication is in nods and eyes, and
Uh,
you have nonverbal communication because you're busy with the other stuff. So
weird.
it actually opens up a kind of a different personality to people, and that's why you find musicians sometimes they're very shy,
Uh,
sometimes they're very big introverts. But then you see them on stage and they seem to be such great performers, and you
mm,
think they're extroverts and they love performing. And for the most part, most musicians that I have found don't um, prefer performing. It's just you need to.
mm,
It's a need to get out there and share it with other people, but it's not a need to perform. Most of them are not that kind of person. They're actually the quiet. I'll use Lady Gaga as an example. She's really very shy
really?
and very drawn in music school. She was, quite the person in the corner that didn't show she had talent or anything.
Yeah.
Got all the way through music school, just did her juries, as they call it, that's your concerts that you have to do to show what you've learned, and your technique and all. And so she did all of that, but she was not a performer in any way, and still doesn't in many ways like the performance side of things.
Huh.
Loves the music side. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
She seems so extroverted, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, but she's just had to grow into that, which is what I think a lot of musicians do. They have to grow into that performance thing. They have to shake the nerves, which a lot of introverts have more nerves than extroverts, of course. So you have to kind of grow into those nerves just a bit to be able to put your wares out there.
Mm.
So, yeah,
So old flutes.
old flutes.
Tell me the story how you became friends with your professor or something like that, or got on uh, good terms, and they had some archaeological thing, and they found a flute that was old
Mm-hmm.
or something that was old, and they didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the bone flute, actually. They had shaved it down so much that you actually couldn't see like the knuckle part of it at each side. And they had actually cut the bottom off, and then the top had been so shaved down that they didn't know what it was. And so that was at Harvard at the time taking a class. And the guy had actually put a flute on without knowing that I was a flute player. It was just part of the class, but he was showing jaguar is a huge thing in the Mayan and the Inca times. The jaguar was the revered animal of the time.
Mm.
And so he was just pulling up a jaguar on a picture. And I tapped in, because it was a Zoom online course. I tapped into him and said, this is a bone. And so that started our conversation on that. And it was really interesting too, because when you looked up from the top, it had a jaguar face that faced out from the top of the flute. But if you actually looked at the top, which is why they shaved it down and everything, is because they actually engraved the picture of a jaguar on the top as well. So it actually looked like when you were playing, you were actually seeing the top of the
No
jaguar,
kidding.
but the people are seeing this outer one. So then he started pulling up a whole bunch of them that he wanted to know about. And there was this one, and it was sort of like a bowl, and it had the face of a woman with downtrod eyes, and these two little holes right where the eye ducts were. And he said, "Why are there holes here?"
Hmm.
And I I had to, sort of 3D view it and everything. It was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I had to, no, I'm sorry, it was at the Peabody Museum because it was in Harvard. And I had to look at it sort of 3D and everything. And I said, do you have the permission to put water in it? And he said, yes, I do. I can do whatever. It's mine. I purchased it from Peabody.
Jeez.
And I said, put water in it and and then rotate it up as though you're drinking out of it.
Mm.
And it did what I thought it would do because I had read about other flutes that were like that. So when you pick it up, it cries. It does a, and so what it is they're like Jewish people and all, they do mourning when they're of the dead.
Yeah.
It's like 2 weeks. You're to wail and cry.
Yeah.
That's their custom, the mourning phrase. Yep.
Yeah.
So that phase, they, how long can you cry, right?
Right. Right.
You burn out after a little while,
Hmm.
and in some traditions they actually have another woman who sits by you who cries for
Your
you,
backup crier.
her backup crier. They even have backups for backup criers. And so I guess this is for when she's solitary at night or whatever, so that she can actually put her tea into this bowl and then it will cry for her while she drinks.
Crazy.
I know. So he thought it was a flute. He thought it was
Hmm.
like an ocarina, but as it turned out, it was actually a teacup, if you
Ah.
will.
How
But
old
anyway,
was that?
oh, well, it was Aztec, so it probably goes to 500 maybe AD.
Wow.
Yeah, somewhere in there. They were somewhere between 300 and 680, I think, of AD before whatever it is that happened to them had them fully eliminated. They don't even know why. They don't know what happened to the Aztecs. Have you heard about that? That
Yes.
they, it's a mystery as to,
Right.
what happened to the whole. It
Yeah.
was huge too. It was 100,000 people maybe,
Yeah.
and toward temples and stuff. They have no idea what happened to them. Whether I my guess is that it's settlers. Some Spanish.
Yeah.
One of them came in and gave them chicken pox.
Yeah.
Is my
I
guess.
think that's the consensus I've heard. So
Is it?
I've
Is
heard
it?
I've heard
Didn't really
all
follow
kinds
it.
of things, but one I get most often is like disease or something like
Yeah,
that. They
it's kind of mine too. But the way that they killed them all pretty suddenly. And they also don't find so many remains, the bones of
yeah,
them. They find some because of burial,
right.
but the burial tends to be before like 600 AD.
Hmm.
So there's still not if they were all killed like that, you would find a mass burial,
Yeah.
and there's not
I
so
think another of
far.
them migrated north into North America
Very
and
possible.
then became the Native Americans, what we call Native Americans.
Right.
And
Although the
no
Native
one's ever
Americans were
related.
there already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're finding that's farther and farther back.
Really?
2000 years is what I'm finding so far.
Oh,
So
really?
2000, um, you know, actually zero, I guess it would be,
Hmm.
is where they're finding it now.
I
Yeah.
I think there's evidence of like I don't know. Well, Vikings, of course, going way back, and Israeli symbols they carved into rocks
Hmm.
from God knows when.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like anyone's guess. I don't know. I don't follow that too closely, but a
Mm-hmm.
weird history here for sure.
Right.
What's the oldest flute that they came across?
40,000.
40,000
40,000
years
years
old.
old. And it was in France, in a cave,
Really?
found with cave drawings of buffalo, if you will, some kind of bison there.
Does Harvard have that or
No, it's
in a
I
museum
think it's
somewhere?
actually a touristy kind of thing now. It's one of those things I want to do in France, Germany as well. It seems, all of the oldest stuff comes from European area,
Yeah,
which does not really make sense because, Mesopotamia,
right.
I mean, yeah, we know that there was in the Mesopotamian area because, I mean, the Psalms even have,
Yeah.
the flutes and all, and that dates back to about the same age. But
They're
yeah,
finding civilizations at the bottom of like lakes and stuff
right,
where it's like, oh, this was once dry
right.
and it was probably a valley or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole town.
Right,
But people think Göbekli Tepe is like really insane. It goes back 10,000 years. So I'm
right.
kind of shocked to hear about flutes being
40,000.
found 40,000
Yeah,
years
and they
ago.
actually, did the dating on it. It was bone, so, it was pretty accurate for the dating. But again, not, it doesn't look like bone. They were even more advanced. So we're not even finding the first flutes.
Right.
They're older than that because these were actually, polished and contained more. A lot of times they do three fingers. That was their original kind of way to do it. It was just three fingers, right hand. And the reason is because there's here, here, and here, so it's kind of an arch.
So it was not
Is what they
flute
do.
1.0. It was flute like fill in the blank like 10.0.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't even know. And, bone breaks apart. And plus, they
Right.
used reeds and things like that too that just totally deteriorate.
Yeah.
But bone lasts long enough and is able to be carbon dated. So
Right.
that's what they're that's what they found, but they know that there were more because of the way they're so polished and jeweled and
Hmm.
painted and, artistically designed and all. The very, very first one
Yeah.
was the femur of a man that
Right.
just, he just went, ha, gotcha, and took the femur off and, and realized because when you break the bone apart, sometimes it actually, uh, I'll use the example of like the wing, where you could break the
Oh, yeah.
wishbone,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It kind of actually makes a wishbone kind of look.
Hmm.
If you break one bone off of the other, it'll
Oh.
kind of do a V, and the V is the first way that we play flute. It was just a V cut, and you blow straight into the center of that V, and it makes a resonance. And then they learned, if you carve just a little bit out of it and made it thinner and thinner, it will actually play even better.
Hmm.
And so that's got to be the very first one. And it actually would have the cartilage, looking things on the edge. So they probably rested the cartilage here and then blew straight into the V, and they made a sound out of the flute. Then they
Yeah.
realized, oh, if I punch a few holes in this, I can actually change the tones of it.
Is the flute thought to be the first instrument or?
Yes, and I keep reading that and I don't believe it, John.
Yeah, because it's
I
got to be percussion, right?
It's
You
got to
would
be
think like,
voice.
oh, well, yeah.
Voice first and then percussion
You'd
after
think
that.
people are banging on stuff
But
as long as it's stick.
is it perhaps because we just can't find it? Because it's always some kind of skin that
Right.
makes the
Yeah.
membrane
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
drum,
Totally.
right? So that would deteriorate.
Yeah.
And you don't make it out of rock because rock doesn't have rare rocks do. I guess if you found one of those ringing rocks,
Right.
that would
Yeah.
be kind of interesting. But for the most part, it's membrane and some kind of wood
Hmm.
deteriorates. So you can't find evidence of it because of the bone. It's a flute just keeps winning that
Yeah.
argument, of which I think it's not true.
It would be something like maybe, is it a xylophone? What's it called? Where you ding 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 ding
Uh-huh.
ding.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's still made out of wood.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you
Yeah.
would find that,
No, you wouldn't find it.
especially not in
And like,
Baltimore.
think about like the Hawaiians, they actually made slit logs. They use, plain old logs, and they hollow them out. They cut a slit and hollow them out, and it's a doo 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 doo
Ah,
sound that they make.
yeah.
That's got to be one of the first ones. They went
Uh,
over and beat a stick against a log.
yeah, and put a little tip jar out on the corner.
That's right. Go to
Yeah.
the corner of
Uh-huh.
bourbon and whatever. And
Yeah. In front of
yeah,
the local stadium.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, if you ever do that, make sure you hold on to the guitar case carefully, because your father and I did that in New Orleans just for a kick. I had my flutes in a bag on my shoulder.
Hmm.
So I just would pull out what I'd want to play,
Yeah.
So I always had it, on my shoulder. But he put his guitar case out for tips. And it went up there pretty good, there's a pretty good amount of them. Till somebody ran off with his guitar case.
Somebody just
Just as
getting
just as fast as they could, man. They
get
come
out of
running from
town.
nowhere, boom, run off with that guitar case, and we're in the middle of playing,
Oh my
we're
gosh.
hooked up to pig amps, and stuff, and yeah, we lost the guitar case and the night's tips. So
No.
it was just for fun anyway. It was
Yeah.
just to say we did it, It wasn't really for the money as much, but although we were broke, but um, and at the subway in New York, you can play as well, New York City.
Yeah.
And we were wiser then. And so when somebody would be too close to the tip jar there, it'd be like he'd move, and kind of block it off a bit, because he knew, unless they had money out and it looked like they were about to pitch, it's like,
Mm.
mm. But well, let me go back to the flutes again. So I think what you're talking about when you introduced all of this was, it was my Harvard professor, David Corrado, and we called him Profe. I hope he's still alive. I have to look him up again. But he's Mexican by native, but moved to Colorado, and doctorate of religion from University of Colorado. Just a wonderful guy. Just if you ever get an opportunity, his discussions on religion are the best, because
Mm.
he has studied every every religion there is. He's done the whirling dervish with the whirling dervish guys. He's done the smoke tent with the Indians. He wants every religious experience from any kind of religion there is. And so he has derived what he feels is the awesomeness, I should use, of God, and how, Christians have a tendency to be very myopic and think that their religion is the superior one, and we have all the answers and everything. And although I am a Christian and I know Jesus Christ, I also know that God is much, much bigger than what we have derived as Christianity.
Yeah.
So he so opened my eyes to all of these things. And so one of the things that he wanted to do was go back to Mexico and kind of make a name for himself. He was in his
Mm.
70s as I was taking the class, which was in 2016, I guess.
Mm.
And so he wanted to go back to Mexico, and he was really fascinated with the pyramids, basically the and it was the one of the moon and the sun. There's the tomb of the moon and the sun, and just outside of Mexico City. And he was just fascinated by it, because they had found a large, looked like a sundial, but in honesty, it really was more of a carving than a sundial, as they tried to sundial it and it didn't work as a sundial. And they're like, this doesn't work. And then they realized it was really meant for something else. I think it was actually a cog of a wheel kind of thing,
Hmm.
more than anything. So they're still not sure exactly what it was. But somebody actually went down below the moon one, and discovered after they took that off to be able to make a sundial out of it, that behind it were all these things, and one of them was a huge cache. It was probably, 4 feet by 2, 3 feet high. It was just a chest. And as they started pulling stuff out, and of course they're doing it, in coordination with the museum there. So they took it to the museum to be, because sometimes when you open stuff, it just deteriorates because of the air. So they wanted to take it to the museum and put it in one of those. They actually have these rooms that actually pumps moist air into the room so that they can open things and take them out and examine them without deterioration. And so they took it back to the museum and opened it, and it was this chest full of flutes, all different kinds, different shapes, different made out of different things and all. And it's still radioactive because there was radon. It had radon
Hmm.
really deeply in many of them. And then I told you about it. There was actually a river of mercury that ran between the moon and the sun tombs, and it still had mercury in it, although it was mostly, dried and stuck to the bottom.
Hmm.
But they used this mercury because they discovered that it had the magnetic effect.
Yeah.
They had so much of it that it made the magnetic effect. So they could actually do their foolery, if you will, for religious services. And they could put, like a light, like a balsam or something, a light box with something that looked like, a god shroud or something like
Hmm.
that. And they could send it from one to the other. And of course, they don't understand
It would appear as
any
though
of
it was
that.
floating
It appeared to be
over the
floating.
mercury because I don't know if they're two positively charged ions or whatever it is,
Well, it
but
had 2 rivers,
yeah.
too. So they really don't know exactly how they did it,
Hmm.
but they did know why because there were writings about it. So
Right.
they did figure out what it was and why it was and all. But it caused all of this examination that they did when they went through and did all of their archaeological dig on it. Everybody that did it got desperately sick
Jeez.
from the mercury,
Huh.
and he just kept going in there. He just kept going in because he was just that curious, and just it's just his nature, and it made him quite sick.
Oh no.
And yeah, they were doing some, some IV kind of stuff and all, trying to get him back. But like I said, I hadn't followed it, and now you got me curious. I'm gonna have to look him up. But but anyway, what he ended up pulling out the most was this cache of flutes. And so once we got our connection about flutes, he was like, I want you to come play these. I know, because I've played enough exotic, ethnic, whatever kind of flutes you want to call them, of wood and glass, and they all have different embouchure plates, or some of them are just a direct hole. When you do a glass one, you actually have to make a lip to it to be able to, keep from cutting yourself.
Hmm.
V hulls. Um, Shakuhachis have V hulls. So anyway, he wanted me to try them, and so he had them tested for me just to see if I was going to end up, deriving any of this. And they found out that the radon was just intensely high
Hmm.
because they were buried underground for so many years and in a wooden crate. So I haven't been able to do it. So maybe someday the Peabody Museum will exhibit them. And once they exhibit them and get them out in open air and everything,
Yeah.
radon has a ability to go.
Dissipates. Yeah.
Yeah, it dissipates. But when I got my degree, finally, it still was. He was like, "I'm sorry, still too hot for you."
Yeah.
So that's the way that one went. But, fascinating. And I started learning about the Mexican customs, especially for this particular one, the one of the sun. And it had 365 steps up to the top, one for each day, obviously. And so back about 200 AD, um, the way that men, well, then let me start over again, a village would choose the most eligible bachelor, and he would play flute. He would have to learn how to and be good at playing flute. And so he would play a different flute every day, which is why there's so many in this cask.
Hmm.
He would play a different flute every day, and we start at, I don't think they were actually January 1st, but let's just use that for an example. On January 1st, they would award him this year's eligible bachelor, and he would go to the woman of his choice and play the flute for her. And then after he would win her over, if you will, because part of the thing was to be like Coco Pelli, where he basically goes around village to village and inseminates the village, right? So he was inseminating these women. He would have his night with that woman, and it would be memorialized by placing that flute in a kind of a special shelf, if you will, on that step. And day two and day three, and he'd use a different flute, and he would choose whatever woman, and as long as his song and his, was good enough that he could better that night, he would, that would be, so he had a woman every day. And
Hmm.
when he got to 365, up to the top of his last woman and the end of the year of his being the most eligible bachelor, they sacrificed him to the gods.
Well, it doesn't seem worth it.
How many people get laid every day for
Yeah,
365,
true. Yeah.
right? There'd be a lot of guys that would give their life to be able to do
I
that. Are
guess
you
so.
kidding? Think about it.
I've got a flute for every woman in this
Right.
village.
And the reason he had so many different ones is, there's taste in that, so some of them were made out of ocarinas, so they kind of sound.
Hmm.
And then some of them would be long, so they would carry. I mean, some of them were double. They actually figured out how to do the double flute. Their design comes from them, so that one side is a drone, the other
Oh,
side is the fingers.
so that was like menage a trois night,
Yeah,
the double flute night.
the double
I'm
flute.
gonna bust out the double flute
There you
today,
go.
honey.
Well, I get, he had to win a girl a day,
Yeah,
right?
that
That was basically,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
pimping ain't easy.
Think it.
Yeah,
There you go. And so, if that flute didn't work for her, let's try this one,
yeah,
and so yeah. So that's the story behind the all these flutes in the thing,
crazy.
and also why it was buried underneath it, and also why there's 365 steps, because how the Aztecs believed in, pulling the heart out and sacrificing it to God,
Hmm.
for rain or crops or yeah, whatever,
Yeah,
whatever their latest prayer was, and there were, there were times of famine and stuff,
right. Yeah,
droughts, whatever. So
they needed a statistician, somebody to like write this stuff down. Like, you know what? I wonder if this really works.
yeah.
Let's look at the. Let's go
Uh-huh.
back at the history here.
Well, I mean, sacrificing able-bodied, perfect people
Yeah.
was, that goes way back in religion,
Yes. Yeah.
way, way back. I mean, as far back as, I mean, even, was it in, probably in Exodus, where they start talking about, they would act, the new firstborn, they used to wall them up. They would take their firstborn, sacrificing it to the god, and they would actually, have a little alcove in the house is where they, mummified and buried them.
Really.
Yeah, yeah, as a good omen to having more children and
Mm,
healthy children and whatever, that was, if you say, it's just, well, think about it, it's still in the Bible, first fruits,
mm,
right? When, I mean, that's some of the, um, what's it called? Sukkot. Um, that's after the harvest comes in, and so your first fruits from whatever you're growing is basically sacrifice to the Lord
yeah.
in order to continue it and to thank Him for providing the soil and the air and the water and the sun, for being able to grow food for you. So, because He gave to you, you give back to Him.
Mm,
And so first fruits is all through the Bible about, offer to the Lord your first fruits.
right.
Yeah, it was kind of pre-tithing, if you will.
Yeah.
Somewhere tithing turned into 10%. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's bullshit. That's
Yeah.
just bullshit. That was made up by some church somewhere,
That
probably the
that
Catholic
was.
Church, right?
Yeah. Oh,
That
for sure.
10% of your stuff is supposed to go, but
So much was just made up by the
yeah.
church, and it's sort of like the Mandela effect. The more you talk about it or whatever,
Mhm,
you just kind of like, well, that's in there, right? That's in the Bible. And
mhm.
then it's not. And help me make
It's not.
sense of this because this is kind of the other thing. So, well, like for example, asking Jesus into your heart,
Mhm,
that's not a thing. The
mm.
Trinity, like the Bible doesn't say the Trinity. It just talks
No, the
about.
Bible does not talk about the Trinity.
And in
The
fact, the Jehovah's Witnesses don't even believe that's a thing.
Right,
Or like, there's so many things that
right.
actually make sense of Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, we don't think that you actually just like disappear and go to heaven and stuff. Like the Bible doesn't talk about that.
Mhm,
Um,
right. But who in Genesis early, we, God says we many times in there.
right.
Well, I did a little backup on that because, I was curious too, Trinity. The Trinity really confused me as I became kind of a new believer. And of course, again, I was raised in a Presbyterian church, which basically meant I didn't know God at all. I had
Right.
no idea.
Yeah.
It's just ritualistic, almost like Lutheran and Catholic and things like that. So I had no idea. It was when I was in my 30s when life absolutely fell apart and I'm losing my house, might lose the kids, might lose everything was when I bent the knee. And the reason that I did was because I was just desperate and I opened the Bible to whatever page he chose and it said, "Do not worry about these things that moths and rust will destroy.
Uh,
What you need to worry about is what is in your heart and how you conduct your life. Don't worry about your material things.
yeah.
I will provide." And he did. And it was true. It was almost instant that after I had that revelation that my mother called me as though she almost saw me in my room praying and said, "What's going on? I haven't talked to you." And I told her what all was going on. And I said, "I'm going to lose the house," because I didn't want to ask my parents for anything.
Yeah.
My father being the way he was,
Mm,
I would never ask him for anything. Once I was out at 18, I was out. And my mother's like, "I will help you. I will provide." And it was just an instant from
mm,
the time that I read it to then. And it has happened over and over and over. And that's what keeps me believing is because of that. And I'll give you an example. That's you fixed my garage, the median of my garage, right? And when I heard that tornado come through and I thought that it was going to fall, I'm like, "Please don't let it fall." And it didn't. And then here you come. He has always brought someone to take care of me.
mm.
And in a more recent example, the snow was we only had one bad snow last winter, but it was a 6 footer. And I have the truck, but it was well above the truck. So there was
Jeez.
no plowing, right? You can't.
This is in Montana.
This is in Montana. I'm sorry, I should have said that. And I tried the snow blower and it laughed at it because it was just so high.
Right.
You hook up the snow blower and you put it on top of the snow and it
Yeah.
just dies. I tried two different snow blowers. It was so packed because it was such an Arctic thing that it
Mm,
was just hard as rock.
jeez.
And I'm not affiliated with the powerhouse where I could get other people to come help me. I'm just like, you know, crying like a baby in my driveway. What am I? Who? You said you were going to help me, and I don't know what to do about this. I can't. I've tried everything physically I can think of. I need help. And as I said, I need help. As the help word comes around, here comes Will, my next door neighbor, with the snowplow, a huge tractor snowplow with the 8 foot tires and the whole thing. And I just went, "Please?" And he went, "Got you covered." And but I mean, that's just a recent one,
Mm,
but I could go on for hours and hours and hours of when I cry out, when and it's usually about the third time. First time I try to do it myself.
Mm.
Second time I, do what I can. Third time I cry out and say, it didn't work. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And he always manages to provide.
Yeah.
So, and it has not failed me either. That's the other thing. I mean, even, with a nasty divorce with your dad, it's like, how am I going to survive up here in Montana in the winters? I've never done snow. I'm from Texas. I don't know. I don't even know how to shovel snow. I never had to because that was our deal when we moved up there was
Shovel the snow.
you handle the snow and the cold things and all, and I'll be able to live here, but I'm not much for the cold and I don't know how to do it. And when he left abruptly and left me with the snow at the powerhouse, I'm like, how do I handle this?
Mm.
How, I don't know what to do. I don't even know, I don't have a truck because he left in the truck.
Mm.
What am I going to do? And it's a contract, you're not getting out of this government contract, as you well know. You don't get out of those. And nobody at the powerhouse was really willing to help me much because they were more his friends than mine. They didn't really know me. I was the nighttime doer, They didn't see me much. They didn't know me. But, he provided Robert, who then taught me how to do it. And then, I wasn't in the greatest of shape, but it got me into shape. And, sometimes it would be like, I don't think I can do this. And it'd be, I would feel the assurance, I'm with you. I'm with you. And I always pulled it off. Never had deficiency in that respect. So, um, that's why I believe is because anytime I have doubts, where are you? What have you done?
Mm.
What you told me you were going,
Mm.
you promised to protect me. And he always has. But it's never on the first call because he's not a genie, right?
Right.
He's not a genie where you just go, oh, I'd really, I wish you'd fix that light and bink, it fixes. It's not
Yeah.
like that. So the first, plea is not, you try first. So I would try, and it's always on the third time, and it's consistent every time. That the third time he steps in, and somehow I can move this. I can pick this up like, the plow. Very heavy. And it got stuck in something and how do I do that? It was like, I will help you. And
Mm.
because of the way that it was in the snow and because of the angle of the sidewalk, suddenly when I pushed it, it moved.
Yeah.
Where I had tried and pushed and pulled and, you know,
Right. Yeah.
so I have example after example after example of how God steps in at times, that I cry out for help.
Well, you know my how I think about this.
I know,
Mm.
I know.
I tend to think like the bottom changes. This was my experience in the army. It's like every time I think I hit bottom, there's another bottom, and then there's a third bottom. And so for me, it's not like I get the answer I'm looking for in the third request so much as the bottom changes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's the second bottom, sometimes it's the fifth. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but it's like the bottom is never really the bottom. Things can get worse and often do, but it's like I'm alive. I saw this person had this sticker in the vinyl letters in his back window of his truck, and it said, "Yeah, but did you die?"
Nah.
That was the whole thing.
Yep, yep.
And it's in my thinking that I adopted in the army was like, do I still have water? Yeah, then I'm good.
Mhm.
I'm cold. I might freeze to death.
Mhm.
Do I still have water? Yeah, okay, I'm good. I can exercise. Uh, am I out of food? Yes. Do I still have water? Okay, I'm not gonna die.
Mhm.
You know, things like, am I really bored? Have I not slept for a while? Like, I still have water. I'm not gonna die.
Mhm.
So
Why do they think that he calls himself the water of life?
yeah, yeah, you'll drink of me and never be thirsty again.
Right. Right.
That is an interesting
Yep.
coincidence.
Yep.
I also think that we have like flashbulb memory. We remember the things that are impressive, but I don't remember all the times that nothing happened, right?
Mhm.
That I really needed something
Mhm.
and then nothing, no
Right.
help arrived.
Mhm.
So like my flashbulb memory is programmed to remember the interesting events over the uninteresting ones. But it is amazing to me, and I often wonder if there's something that I'm missing here because some really smart people, the smartest people, it's like I have difficult time interfacing with people in the United States, Christians in the United States, because um, a lot of them just don't know a whole lot, and so it's like they're like, oh, you don't believe in God, and I'm like, I don't even want to have the conversation with you because in order to get you caught up to where I am, it's gonna take a while,
Mhm.
and we're gonna have to get through all this muck that you've developed in your head. And there are people who get past that muck and still have some faith, and I'm like, how did you do it?
Mhm.
So like for example, like the Jesus story, the first time that I found out that that's basically plagiarism from other cultures
Yes,
that
yeah.
came around before
Mhm.
Jesus,
Mhm.
visitation by wise men, crucifixion,
Mhm.
forgiveness of sin, um, and the born of a virgin.
Mhm.
These are stories from other cultures that came around, stories that predate Jesus.
Mhm.
And it's not surprising that we find them in the Jesus story because the Samaritans and the Egyptians and Asian cultures had these stories too. And so for me, my it was like the stages of grief. My first experience that was like, okay, well, I don't know, is that really true? And then I do some reading, and I'm like, aha, see, it's not true. So I was just confirming what I wanted to believe. I
Right.
was doing research bias,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
I forget the little book that I had that was that I thought was really good on this. Anyway, um, and then more time goes by, and I start to accept it, and then I'm like, okay, so the Jesus story is not what Christian churches in America say it is, and
Mhm.
salvation is not what they say it is, and monotheism isn't really a thing.
Mhm.
And so, and it just like, I don't want to have the conversation with people because it takes so long to get them caught up, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm just like, thank you, no thank you, you don't know what you're talking
Mhm.
about. And so I feel like I approach pastors in America too this way. It's sort of like, why am I going to interface with you? You're either a liar, you know what I know, and you're still preaching the same stuff, um, or you don't know what I know and you're not educated, and why would I interface with you?
Mhm.
But then there are people. It seems like there's a branch. Like after you attain a certain level of knowledge, you either go off to like the Sam Harris thing, and you're like, okay, well, it's all fake, and then or you go off into I would say like Eric Weinstein,
Mhm.
who's Weinstein,
Einstein.
who the smartest person I've ever listened to, and still has some faith, still prays,
Mhm.
and it's like, what am I missing here? What
Mhm.
is it that you people have figured out that I haven't figured out yet?
You were I like to call it you were inoculated. I because I know your background
Mm.
of religion. So you went to community Bible or something Bible church, community Bible church.
I've been to all of them. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Presbyterian ones, the
Yeah.
non-denominational. Yeah,
And you had a you had a Catholic mother
yeah.
who you know converted to Protestant
Mm.
basically, to a Bible church. Well, I went to your Bible church a couple of times, cuz you would have plays and things like that,
Oh yeah.
So yeah, Jesse was in a couple of plays there, so I
I'm
went.
sorry to
They
hear
had
that.
a little Oh, don't you remember he
God
had the
bless you.
lymph? He did the lymph,
Oh God, no,
yeah,
I don't.
okay, so
God, I don't.
there was that one, and we actually went to another service too, and I forget why, but, so I had actually been to it, and they were, oh, what I would call Bible thumpers, okay?
Mm.
So, the Bible,
If it's not a Christian song, it's a bad song.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you were very strictly raised,
Mm.
you didn't watch The Simpsons, I remember
Right.
that.
Wasn't allowed to.
I know, that's why you'd come to my house and you guys would have such a great time because it's like, "Yeah, you can watch The Simpsons, give a shit." So, oh, I got you remember we went to movies that Jesse wasn't supposed to go to because they had something about gay in them, and it was just like,
Okay.
we went
Yeah.
to, was it To Wong Fu?
Thanks for everything.
Yes, remember
Yeah.
that? Oh my god,
Wasn't allowed
Jesse
to watch it. Yeah.
Jesse got in so much trouble because he told your mom about it.
Right.
So
And all this stuff, come to find out, you watch it and it's like, well, that's kind of the dumbest thing ever. Like, what's the big deal about that?
but she was so trying to protect him from
Yeah.
becoming gay. It was like he was born that way.
Yeah. You have
I'm
to
sorry, he was
pray it the gay
born
away.
that way.
That's
So
the thing people don't understand if they haven't grown up in
yeah,
a house with one of the siblings being gay.
they
They're
are
just like,
from birth.
they're just like, I don't believe in this. Like born gay. Like you don't know what you want when you're, and you don't know what sex you're attracted to when you're born. So how is that even possible? And
Mhm.
it's like
And he
you
played
have
with
to see it to
Barbies.
believe it,
He
man.
played with Barbies. He like,
Every time we got on like a video game, Legend of Zelda or whatever, like Mortal Kombat, he
yeah.
would choose the female,
Hmm.
and he was always very feminine just from the time he was. This is my proof that it's just like a real thing you're born with,
Hmm.
because he was too young to understand. We knew he was gay before he knew he was gay.
Hmm. Right. Because we used to make jokes about it. Remember?
Yeah, yeah,
I used to do gay jokes all the time, and
yeah,
and I just realized, it sort of made me take a sideways look at Jesse, but he would laugh along with you guys because he just didn't realize that was what he was yet.
yeah, yeah.
And I remember saying to Dan at one time, it was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Oh, he would not accept it.
really?
No, he never accepted it.
Huh,
How could something that came out of me be gay?
right.
Pride, pride.
Oh God.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he tried his best to sort of toughen him up and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
but like we talked about before, I have a feeling that your father was very much like Jesse when he was young as well.
Mm,
I
yeah.
think he was, not necessarily gay, but
Right.
effeminate.
Feminine. Yes.
Effeminate.
Yeah.
That's why his dad sent him out to fight
Yeah.
because it was like this boy needs some toughening up,
Yeah.
and he apparently had tried and couldn't get him to,
Right.
and so he just sent him out to the social side of things to toughen him up.
Hmm.
And you know I mean, as much as it is a PTSD thing for him,
Kind of worked.
it worked.
Yeah.
It really worked. It turned him into a man
Right.
in a lot of ways, to know that he had to defend himself, that his
Yeah.
father wasn't going to be there, that he
Right.
can't be like
Right.
this.
Yeah.
So,
That's my best description of why I did the army.
mhm,
And well, I didn't have the goal in life of going into the army. It was to go to war. That was my goal.
right.
And so I don't know why people say like why was your one of your bucket list items go to war? And it was like, well, I can only associate it to a rite of passage.
Mhm,
There's something that men need to do in order to have self-confidence, and it's a shame that we need to go out onto the street and get pushed around by other boys, right?
yes,
It's a shame that some things need to come about these ways,
it
but they
just
do come about
is.
these ways. And so there's something natural in me that understood that, I
Mhm,
guess. Didn't make any kind of sense,
mhm,
but there is trial by fire.
mhm,
It goes a long way in increasing confidence and self-efficacy and things like
mhm.
that. I'm a big supporter.
And it was such a great thing because I remember you before you went in. And you were floundering then too. Remember, you were working for us, doing tours and
Mm,
cleaning and stuff like that, right? That was right before you went in,
yeah,
like the year before, even, I think,
yeah,
that you went in. And, I could tell that you were just unsettled, that no job was satisfying you.
right.
You just did not really have your person, you needed that for your personality because you were basically just wild. You would just, like I said,
Fickle.
ride your motorcycle on one wheel and
Yeah,
things like that, and I'd just be, oh, please don't take him now, let him grow into himself.
that's why a lot of people do those things, like sports too. Like people get really into football, and
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
understand it. It's like we're simulating what war,
yeah,
combat,
yeah.
in some sense. And so it's like there's actual combat that you could just do. Or it's like, why jump off cliffs, for fun, when it's like you could probably rescue a child from a bridge or something
Mm-hmm.
if that's what you're into. Like we
Right.
could actually use your body
Uh-huh.
in some
Right.
areas. So I think that when we don't have these types of responsibilities, we
Mm-hmm.
simulate it through other things
Yeah,
like riding motorcycles or whatever. And I have lost pretty much all of my desire to do any of those
to do
things.
those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've just seen such a big difference in you, and we had that gap there that we didn't see each other while you were in the military too. So, um, I knew you as when you were, working with us with the government contracts, and then, left, and then after that you went into the military, and I was really all for it, which generally I'm not. I love your quote in your book here, of your mom said, military's for stupid people.
Yeah.
I love that quote because in a way it is. In a
Right.
way it is because they're not going to expand your mind. They're expanding your body,
Yeah.
and they're teaching you discipline, and it does give you a good pearl of life of which you didn't have because your dad wasn't around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that he would have been all that great of help with it, honestly, because he still hasn't grown up. He still is not a grown man in many, many ways. But so you wouldn't have gotten it off of him. And your mom was just too into the Christian thing
Mm,
that it got too hard to stomach,
yeah.
basically, you know. And so back to the religion thing. So I remember even probably one of the last times, I even it was Jeremy's funeral, and I remember when I said to Dan, I
My
was like,
brother's Jeremy's funeral.
"What's that?"
My brother Jeremy's funeral.
Yes, your brother.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forget
Yeah.
to
That's
blend
okay.
the
Yeah.
blend the rest of the crew.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
So he hung with the bar crowd, the non-Christian crowd.
Yeah.
I knew that, and I said to Dan, when we decided it was not going to be a church service, you and I kind of talked, and you're like, nah, what are we going to do? What kind of memorial, whatever. And then they offered the bar.
That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It
Casa
was,
de Leo's, by the way. Shout out
ah,
to that restaurant. The
shout
owner
out.
was like,
They were so good to us.
he was a big Italian guy, and he goes, "Oh no, no, you're gonna have it here. We'll have sandwiches, and it'll be
Mhm.
nice. I'll have a little
He
prosciutto
did
some."
such a nice job. He really
He just
did.
said, "You're gonna have it here."
Mhm. And it was the perfect thing too. But I, took one good look at the crowd, and I realized, there's no message I am to give you about dying and death and funeral, whatever, any of the funeral things that I would do at a Christian one would not is not appropriate.
Yeah.
It just simply it would just go right over the head. And I remember that you spoke about Romans. You read some Romans to the crowd. Do you recall that?
No.
You did. You read, I don't know, I don't remember what chapter. I actually wasn't listening to you so much as I was so bowled over because here, he and I are the preachers, are the pastors, or we're going around, traveling around to church, doing everything, weddings, funerals, whatever, Bible studies, all this kind of stuff. Yet you were the one who had the guts to stand up in front of this non-Christian crowd and read Romans to them. And you were basically it was sort of the Roman road, although you didn't do it fully, you know what I mean? But you read the important parts of the Roman road
Oh.
to Christianity. And I remember being bowled over because you were the one who had the guts and we didn't. And that I got to throw that one out first.
Huh.
Yeah, you don't remember that, huh?
No.
And so, see, that was the last time, really, that I saw you because it was a long time then after that. Uh, that we got back together again. And then, now I see the difference in your belief foundations and stuff. Um, but yeah, you had the guts to speak when I didn't, to a crowd that was moderately, I was busy looking at you, and then at the crowd to see what the reaction was. And it was honestly, we probably could have done something. We were just too embarrassed, if you will. We were basically embarrassed of our Christianity for a bar crowd,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So, but I
What's
was
funny
looking
is like
at them and they
a lot
did.
of that crowd is now Christian.
Is that right?
Jeremy's friends, yeah, and I'm not. So
Yeah. Well, I remember that Mark and
Mark, yeah,
yeah, yeah, you started a Bible study not
yep,
long after that. I
yep.
remember that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, you had eyes, you had every eye on you, as you were reading Romans to them. I was just sitting in shame. I really was. I was absolutely shamed for my embarrassment of not trying with
Hmm.
this crowd. Taught me a very deep lesson. That's why I remember it so vividly. And so I was surprised, once we returned back together again. that your feelings, your religious feelings are different because you were so brave then to do that um, during that day. So, but and it basically kind of picked me up from there to not be shy, to talk to people who obviously they may or may not want to hear it, and I'll cut it off pretty quick because I don't want to be that kind,
Yeah.
but but I will bring up God to someone that I don't think believes, or I'm less to speak of Jesus, and that's because of just the I'm embarrassed of Christianity for the most part. I really am.
I
I'm
think you should be.
embarrassed of, I mean, you go back and you look at like one of the first courses you take in seminary is History of Christianity.
Hmm.
And you just, I mean, page one, some popes stealing from everybody. And, they had the land, they held the land,
Yeah.
they held the money, they held the riches, they held everything. And they kept them subjugated so that they would continue to contribute. Even to the point of close to Martin Luther's time, selling fetishes, right? Which is a very polytheistic idea,
Yeah.
selling fetishes to the Catholics to in case like your grandfather died and you knew that they weren't believers or whatever,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
them into heaven.
This is what I don't think Christians understand. I'm like, you realize you are the Pharisees.
Yes,
Like,
Sadducees.
yeah.
Or Sadducees, which
Uh,
are even worse because they
yeah.
were even, Pharisees were like the preachers, Sadducees were like the bishops, if
Yeah.
you will. So they were like the leaders and everything. And, they were just as greedy as.
Hmm.
So the history of Christianity is 2 books this thick, two
Hmm.
books volume 1, volume 2, and it's embarrassing all the way through. And it would be like this pope, and then somebody else takes over, and then this pope, and they all had to build their own buildings and their own cathedrals and basilicas, and where are we going to get the money? Oh, we'll get them off the poor people, the peasants. Just it's so embarrassing that that is what Christianity is, and it's not. And it's why a lot of times when I do preaching at places that don't know me, the places that I'm doing like in the next month or so, they know me and they enjoy me because I step out of the box of what they normally do, and they know that they can ask me any question. So they put up with me, but I have been thrown out of a lot of churches.
Yeah.
A lot of churches. I get the lecture from whomever at
And you
the
know
end.
why that is? It's because they're idolaters.
Yes.
And so what's going on is that you're shaking up their identity of God. And so then they're it's almost like you're saying, well, what your God is a false God.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, of course, because
Yes, and it
everybody has a
is.
different idea of what God is
Right.
that they've made up in their
Right.
heads. And you shake up that idea
Mm-hmm.
and then suddenly, oh, that's idolatry. This is my example of anytime that somebody says, why God, right? Why me? I'm
Oh,
like, oh, you're an idolater.
right.
Because what you're saying is, I had this previous idea of what God was,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's being called into question. So, like, so they experience the confusion, and the
Mm-hmm.
confusion, it points to idolatry,
Yep.
is how I see it.
And the Bible is not inerrant. It is,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, on one of the podcasts I was listening to in bed the other night was wrapped around Isaiah, right? In the Qumrati, stuff,
Mm,
uh, is the Book of the Giants.
mm,
Did not know that, but it was part of, Isaiah. And again, Isaiah is verbatim, absolutely verbatim from the Essene jar to what we have today.
really.
Verbatim. Yeah. Yeah. Not a tit or tuttle or whatever it is. And it's absolutely verbatim from beginning to end, 63 chapters or something like that.
I bet there's
Yeah.
typos.
Well, No, there's translation boo-boos.
Well,
All
for
right.
sure there's that.
Definitely translation
For sure
things.
there's that. But I mean, you and I have written enough stuff and read enough things to know there are typos in
Yes,
literally everything.
but not in scrolls. So because the way that they did it, the way that basically monks, I'll just call it monks for
Mm.
lack of a better word, but the way that they did it back then, actually they numbered each letter, and
Oh,
it was
oh,
and it was as they well, let's actually read
so they
that
didn't
way.
number verses, they
They
numbered letters.
the letter was numbered so that one scribe would take they actually proofread each other's, and one scribe would
That's so cool.
proofread the next ones, and they actually would not only read it, and do it by that way, but they would also apply numbers to it, so that the numbers it actually had to mathematically, and it was footed at the bottom of each page,
Yeah.
if you will, of a scroll, as the lines were like that. It was footed at the bottom of the page and added to the end.
Yeah. Well, so that takes care of that. But
Hmm.
a lot of the Bible are letters, like literal letters written to
Oh,
an organization, like Paul's
like
writings.
Paul's writings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know
Yeah.
that's there. Like
Yeah.
I for like
The New
100%.
Testament is full of bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just full of bullshit.
It's
Just,
full of good stuff too. Like I'm not like one of these people
it's
that
the,
wants to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
it has the principles, which again goes back to I know Jesus because I get his principles. It's not about you.
Yeah,
It's about
I'll say that so
other
many
people.
times. Yes.
It's not about you, it's about other people. It's that is his biggest point of all of it. Stop being selfish.
Yeah.
Stop being greedy. Stop being like you are basically designed
Yeah.
by God
Yeah.
to be, right?
Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh, what time is it?
It's 12:00 on the dot.
Ah,
So we'll wrap this up. We
okay.
just have more to come across the next time because
Yeah.
I wanted to
We
talk
have
about some
wandered
of your
on several
business
topics.
background. You had such an interesting job, which I tell people was firing people for a living in
Yeah,
the corporate world. You had a
that I
corporate sales
did.
job,
Yeah.
and now we got companies. So okay, thank you so much for
Thank
your time.
you.
For listening.
Thank you.
Bye.